right, let's get into the myths of Owen Tippett, Charlie, and see if we can dispel them or at least come up with a...
Put them in context.
Put them in context. Because they're not all completely like crazy.
No, they're not.
It's just maybe sometimes, all right, he does this thing. Oh, he does it all the time. Well, no one does anything all the time.
Right.
Like, all right, I think 1 and 2 are very closely related. It's Owen Tippett is not a good finisher. Owen Tippett misses the net a ton. Okay. I think those two things, people kind of combine them.
And to be clear, this is something that every shooter type gets. I think back to the last time the Flyers had a volume shooter. What do we all remember about Jeff Carter? It's he missed the net, missed the net, missed the net. What gets brought up every time Jeff Carter comes up, it's Game 6, Cup final, he missed. And he is the last guy who played. I mean, Tippett, other than the fact that Tippett can't play center, he's not a center. Tippett and Carter have a lot of similarities, man. Both great skaters, both volume shooters. Like their games they were both huge, but neither necessarily played like a power forward. They were big guys. They had the size, but they didn't play like a John LeClair where they were or like a Wayne Simmons where they were battling in front of the net constantly. Like Tippett has his power move to the net. Carter would do it on occasion, but they never played as big as maybe they were. Owen Tippett, we're going to start with this, isn't a good finisher. It's not that he's not a good finisher. He has a good shot. And the stat that we have up on here, which is looking at expected goals versus actual goals. Owen Tippett, if you go by where he takes shots from, and whether they're on the rush, things like that, this is the public model off of Evolving Hockey. His expected goals total over the last 2 seasons combined, 49.94, basically 50 goals over 2 years. His actual goal total is 55. That means that he scored 5 more goals than expected. If he was a bad finisher, and there are bad finishers in the NHL, he would have fewer goals than expected. He is, at the very least, a decent, slightly above average league finisher. That's fine. The problem is, and this is where the frustration comes from, is that the great goal scorers are really, really good finishers. Like I have this chart in the article. We're not going to put it up, but if you want to read the article, you can see it. Last season, David Pastrnak finished with 40 expected goals. He scored 47. Austin Matthews finished with 50 expected goals. He scored 69.
Nice.
Phil Forsberg finished with about 38 expected goals. He finished with 48. So these are guys who we think of as the great goal scorers at the NHL level. And they consistently beat their expected goal totals by somewhere between 5 and 20, depending upon the season. Whereas Owen gets you like an extra 2 or 3 a year, which ain't bad. It's not like he's a bad finisher. It's just he's not a great finisher. And people look at the true goal scorers, the guys who shoot the puck about as often as Owen Tippett does. And they see guys who are scoring 45, 50 goals a year. Owen Tippett, it's not that he's a bad finisher. It's just that he's not a great finisher.
So I think the thing that stood out to me there was when you look at where he shoots from. Now, we've seen him on the rush finish around the net a little bit more. Yeah. He's been better at that. Yeah. Deking, actual. But for the most part, even whether he's on the rush, off the cycle, whatever it is, he's trying to wire that shot. And pretty hard to beat goalies clean with a shot in the NHL.
And he does it.
And he does it.
Yeah.
But he probably could stand to, you said he doesn't play big. And I don't need him to be a prototypical power forward. No. He's never going to be Wayne Simmons. Yeah. But when I see a guy who's 6'1", 6'2", 210, 215, use that size to get your ass to the middle of the ice a little bit more.
I would agree.
Take your shot, not from the top of the circle, but from the hashes. Stuff like that. Is that a valid criticism?
I think that is a valid criticism. I think the Flyers even recognize it. If you remember, it was less a focus this season, but the previous season, his first full season in Philly, I remember the final 2 months of, this would have been the 2022-2023 season. This was the first Torts year. Final 2 months of that season, John Tortorella on a daily basis was telling Tippett and then speaking to the media about it that Tips needs to play like a power forward. needs to drive the net. And there would be times after games where Owen Tippett would drive the net on a play. He would take the puck to the net. He wouldn't necessarily score, but he would take the puck to the net on a play. And I would ask John Tortorella after the game, like, is that what you're looking for from Owen? And he would smile. I'd be like, that's exactly what I'm looking for from Owen Tippett. So the Flyers know. They know that Tippett could take a big step forward from a goal scoring standpoint if he had a little bit more of a net focused game. And I think he definitely does it more than he did it when he got here. He does take the puck to the net more. He's had some really good goals that way. He gets to the slot more often. But he still probably does play a little bit too much of a perimeter game if he wants to be a 40 to 45 goal scorer. If he wants to get those garbage goals, he's going to have to go to the net a little bit more. And he has the frame and the physicality to do it. He just doesn't do it as often as maybe he could. And that would be a way for him to, because really what we're talking about here with these myths and what we're talking about in terms of his flaws, we're talking about ways for Owen Tippett to go from being a 30-goal scorer on a yearly basis or a 30-ish goal scorer because he hasn't hit that threshold yet. But to go from that plateau and just go up just a bit more, go up to 35 a year, go up to 40 a year. We're not asking him to be a 60-goal scorer a year. Like, if he was going to be that, we'd have seen it by now. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that with a few tweaks, a few improvements here and there, he could be a 40-goal scorer. And that is one, getting to the net more, playing a little bit less on the perimeter, a little bit more in the slot and into the crease area that could get him to that point.
Having a distributor on the power play obviously would help.
It would, to be sure.
But I've never seen him. I've seen him take a few. I'm not going to say never. He is more of a carry the puck, find my spot, and shoot guy. Maybe not the most adept one-timer option.
True.
It just feels like, man, if he could stand in that OV spot on his off wing and rip shots on the power play, or find a spot for him where he's comfortable,
right,
you would be able to add a few more goals to that total, get him comfortable where, yeah, all right, his shooting percentage is under 10%. You'd like to see it closer to 15. One place where he's just a little more comfortable, where he can be more efficient in the shots he does get on net.
No, there are options for him on the power play. I mean, the two options that I would love for him to flourish in one of the two, because I think he could flourish in both in theory based on his skill set. The one is the one you mentioned, which is on the off wing, blasting away. The problem is that right now they don't have a pure playmaker who can get him the puck regularly. Like, he can't do what Voracek did, where Voracek and Drew would just flip the puck across the slot constantly because they were both incredible passers. Tippett is not an incredible passer. If he's going to be in that spot, he has to be in that spot as a pure shooter. And if he's going to be in that spot as a pure shooter, kind of needs a pure playmaker on the other side to get him the puck. They don't really have that. I don't even know if they have that with Michkov. Not because I don't think he's a really good passer, because he can be. It's just I kind of want him focused more on scoring.
I want him closer to the net too.
I want him focused more on scoring. Or at least he could be on that other side. He could be on that right side flank if Tippett's on the left. But I don't want Michkov's job to be feeding Owen Tippett. I want Michkov's job to be crashing the net and creating and, being that hybrid goal scorer passer where he's passing because teams are selling out to prevent him from shooting, and then he can find really good angles to pass and find people open. That's what I want for Tippett. So Tippett, number one, if he could find a way to make it work as that offside one-time option, shooting option. Number two, and this would be potentially a way maybe if he could flourish in the spot, in the bumper. Because you could envision a scenario where, he's taking shots in the bumper. Scott Hartnell thrived there, scored a lot of goals there. And he has the size where if you're a really good bumper option, what you have the ability to do is you can then crash the net and score some garbage goals when things get greasy down there, the puck gets loose, because you're not that far from the crease area. It takes one or two strides and boom, you're there. And if you see a loose puck, you poke it in. You get 3 or 4 of those goals per year, suddenly we're talking about a 35-goal score.
And if they go with the typical setup, not the one I want, but the typical, like, puck goes behind the net, your power forward in front of the net now suddenly has to be that down low guy. You need to then crash down. So you fill in behind him. Right. Like, that's where you can, from that spot, get those net front goals.
And he has the size and the strength where if he crashes down, he's not going to get bullied out of the way if he comes with purpose.
We all silly like the mayor.